A mouse click at 10:47 a.m. at the O'Hare airport check-in counter changed the fate of the entire flight. Lead flight attendant Gillian Mercer secretly changed Damien Cross's ticket to give his seat to wealthy passenger Victoria Beaumont. Their disrespect was clear as they looked down on the simple black father traveling with his little daughter, Chloe. Damien sat in seat 2D to test the airline security, and this conflict exposed a major loophole. Now, he began his journey to expose the corrupt managers under pressure from $1 million deal. Can a father's determination stand against the clever cover-ups of an entire airline? To understand that click, we need to go back 3 hours. The story starts in a quiet office on the top floor of Aerocrest National Airlines. Damien Cross sat at his desk. He held a boarding pass in his hand. The paper felt thin and cool between his fingers. It read Flight AC, 9982, Seat 2D, and a price of $4, 217.83. He did not book a private jet. He booked this seat like anyone else. He wanted to feel what his customers feel every single day. His gray sweater had a soft, worn collar. The cuffs were frayed from years of washing. His late wife, Maya, gave him that sweater before she got sick. He never stopped wearing it. 8-year-old Chloe sat across from him. She hugged a canvas bag full of watercolor paintings. Her paintings would hang in a small gallery near LAX tomorrow. "Daddy, will people like my art?" she asked. Her voice was soft and hopeful. Damien smiled and touched her hair gently. "They will love it, sweetheart, just like I do." He made a quiet promise to himself. He would protect her joy from a world that often judges too fast. He folded the boarding pass and slid it into his coat pocket. Outside his window, a jet taxied down a distant runway. The low hum of its engines rattled the glass just slightly. Somewhere below, workers pushed heavy luggage carts across the tarmac. Diesel fumes drifted up and mixed with the smell of hot coffee from his desk. Damien did not know that 3 floors below, a different kind of engine had already started. A budget memo pushed staff to cut security checks by 91 seconds per passenger. Nobody objected. Profit came first that quarter. His assistant, a young man named Trevor, knocked twice and stepped inside. "Sir, the corporate jet is fueled and ready whenever you want it," Trevor said. Damien shook his head. "Book me a regular seat instead," he said. "I want to feel what our passengers feel." Trevor blinked, surprised. "Even in economy, sir?" "First class this time," Damien said with a small smile. "One step at a time." Trevor nodded and left the office, quietly closing the door behind him. Damien could hear his footsteps fade down the hallway, growing fainter with each step. He turned the worn boarding pass over in his fingers again. The paper edges had already gone soft from handling. He thought of Maya, how she used to fold his shirts the exact same way, careful and precise. 3 years had passed since the illness took her. Some mornings the grief still sat heavy behind his ribs, quiet but present, like a stone in his chest pocket. Chloe tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, will Mommy see my paintings from heaven?" she asked. His throat tightened for a moment. "She'll see every single one," he said softly. He grabbed Chloe's small suitcase and stood up. "Let's go make some memories," he said. Neither of them knew what waited for them at Gate 14. At the gate, the air smelled like burnt pretzels and cold metal. A soft chime rang overhead, calling first-class passengers to board. Damien walked Chloe down the narrow jet bridge. Their footsteps echoed off the ribbed metal walls, hollow and rhythmic. He found seat 2D by the window and settled Chloe in a 2F beside him. She pressed her small nose to the glass, watching baggage carts crawl across the tarmac far below. A flight attendant offered them warm towels. Damien thanked her and wiped his hands slowly, feeling the heat sink into his tired knuckles. For a few peaceful minutes, everything felt calm. Chloe hummed a quiet tune, tracing shapes on the foggy window with one finger. Then, at exactly 10:47 a.m., sharp heels struck the floor of the first-class cabin. Each step cracked like a small whip against tile. Victoria Beaumont walked in wearing a cream jumpsuit that fit her like a second skin. Her handbag alone cost $85 for 100. It swung from her wrist with careless confidence. She scanned the cabin and stopped. Her eyes locked on seat 2D. A man in a plain gray sweater sat there, holding a little girl's hand. Her nose wrinkled. She lifted a silk scarf and pressed it to her face like a shield. The whole cabin caught a whiff of her heavy, sweet perfume, thick enough to taste in the back of the throat. "Excuse me," she said loudly, without even looking at Damien's eyes. "I think you're in the wrong section." Damien felt his chest tighten. He glanced at his own boarding pass, then back at her. "This is seat 2D, he said calmly. "It's mine." She leaned closer, her perfume thickening in the small space between them. "This cabin is for serious travelers," she said, her lips curling. "Not for people who clearly wandered in by mistake." Chloe shrank back at her seat, her small hand gripping her father's sleeve tight. Victoria snapped her fingers toward the aisle. "Jillian, get over here right now." Lead flight attendant Jillian Mercer rushed over, her low heels clicking fast against the cabin floor. She looked at Damien's frayed sweater. Then she looked at Victoria's designer jumpsuit. Her posture changed instantly. "Sir, can I see your ticket again?" Jillian asked, her tone sharp and doubtful. Damien handed it over without a word. Chloe squeezed his arm tighter, her small fingers digging into his sleeve. Her wide eyes darted between the two women, confused and afraid. Jillian flipped the boarding pass over twice, as if the truth might hide on the back. Around them, other first-class passengers pretended to read magazines, but their eyes kept flicking toward the aisle. A soft mechanical hum from the overhead air vents filled the pause. Somewhere near the galley, ice clinked softly into a glass. Could a valid ticket, bought and paid for, protect a father from being humiliated in front of his own child? Damien's jaw tightened as Jillian studied the ticket like it might be fake. His pulse thumped once hard behind his ears. Every instinct in him wanted to reach into his coat and pull out his black and gold executive ID card. One glance at that card, and this whole show would stop cold. But he held back. If he revealed himself now, he would only fix his own problem. He would never see how deep this rot ran inside his own airline. He chose patience instead. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "we bought this seat for my daughter. It's the seat listed right here." Victoria rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. She looked at Chloe like she was an object blocking her path, not child. Would this quiet patience calm the storm, or only feed it? Across the aisle, an older man watched everything. His name was Samuel Vance, 74 years old, a veteran with a faded green cap resting on his knee. Samuel stood slowly, using the armrest for balance. His knee ached, with every movement a dull throb from an old war wound. He walked over and placed a steady hand on Damien's shoulder. "Son," Samuel said, his voice rough but warm like gravel wrapped in wool, "I fought for equal treatment in this country. Don't let anyone rob your girl of her dignity today, not even someone with $1 million in her purse." Damien looked into the old man's eyes. Something in his chest loosened just slightly. That single sentence felt like fuel poured into a tired engine. He nodded once. "Thank you," he whispered. "I needed to hear that." Samuel patted his shoulder once more before easing back into his own seat. His faded cap slipped slightly, revealing a thin white scar above his ear, a quiet mark from a war long past. Chloe watched the old man settle down. Something about his steady presence made her grip on her father's arm loosen, just a little. "You know," Samuel added, leaning forward slightly, "back in my unit, we had a saying, 'Quiet men win the longest wars.'" Damien let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "I'll remember that," he said. Samuel winked at Chloe. "Your daddy's got this," he said. "Trust me, little one." Would one veteran's words be enough to help Damien survive what came next? Jillian handed the ticket back with a stiff frown. "I'll need you to step out of this seat," she said. "We have a situation to sort out." Damien did not move. He stood up slowly, his broad shoulders squaring toward the aisle, shielding Chloe behind him. "I'm not leaving this seat without a written reason," he said, his voice low and firm. "Show me the policy that says a paid ticket can be taken away." Jillian's fingers fumbled with her radio. She called for backup. Within a minute, a heavy-set man in a navy blazer stormed into the cabin. His name tag read Dominic Frost, Ground Services Manager, Gate 14. His shoes squeaked against the cabin floor, and a faint smell of stale coffee followed him down the aisle. Sweat already gathered along the edge of his collar, dark and damp. He scanned the scene fast, eyes darting between the frayed gray sweater and the gleaming cream jumpsuit. He made his decision before he even opened his mouth. "What seems to be the trouble here?" Dominic asked, though his eyes never once landed on Damien. Jillian leaned close and whispered the situation into his ear. Dominic's eyebrows rose slightly at the mention of the Apex Zenith contract. He straightened his blazer and cleared his throat the way men do when they want to sound important. Dominic did not look at Damien first. He looked at Victoria. He gave her a small, respectful nod, the kind reserved for someone very important. "Ms. Beaumont, I am so sorry for the delay," Dominic said quickly. Sweat already dotted his upper lip. Victoria uncrossed her arms and leaned toward Dominic. "If this man is not gone in 5 minutes," she said, her voice dropping cold and sharp, "I will cancel the entire Apex Zenith contract. That's $24,510,000 gone." The cabin fell into a strange, tense hush. Even the low hiss of the air vents seemed to grow louder in the silence. Dominic's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. $24 million was more than his entire division's yearly budget. He could already picture his name attached to that failure. His fingers twitched at his side, and a thin bead of sweat rolled down his temple. "Ms. Beaumont, please," Dominic said, his voice almost pleading now. "Give us just a few minutes to sort this out quietly." Victoria checked her thin gold watch, tapping one manicured nail against the glass. "You have 4 minutes now," she said flatly. "How far would men in uniform go to protect a stack of cash?" Dominic's hands trembled slightly. He leaned toward Jillian and whispered something low near her ear. Jillian's eyes widened for a second, then narrowed with grim resolve. She turned to her small service laptop and began typing fast. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, changing something in the passenger record. Samuel Vance caught the motion and stood up again. "What are you doing to his ticket?" he barked. Jillian did not answer him directly. Instead, she snapped, "Sir, sit down, or I'll flag you for a flight ban too." Samuel's mouth tightened, but he sat, fists clenched on his knees. Chloe's tears started falling now, dropping onto the edge of her canvas art bag. The soft clicking of Jillian's keyboard sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet cabin. Each tap felt like a tiny hammer striking somewhere deep in Damien's chest. He watched her fingers move, calm on the outside, but his jaw muscles pulled tight beneath his skin. Could one click of a mouse erase the truth completely? Dominic grabbed Damien's arm. "Sir, you need to come with me," he said flatly, without a shred of warmth. He pulled Damien and Chloe out into the jet bridge. The air there felt colder, stale, and smelled faintly of jet fuel and old carpet. Chloe sobbed quietly, her tears smearing the edge of one painting. The wet paper wrinkled under her small fingers. The jet bridge lights buzzed faintly overhead, a thin electric whine that never seemed to stop. Somewhere below, a baggage cart rattled over a metal seam, sending a sharp clang echoing up the tunnel. Cold air rushed through a gap near the accordion walls, carrying the sharp bite of jet fuel. Damien pulled his sweater sleeve down over Chloe's small, trembling hand. Dominic looked Damien up and down one last time. "Look at yourself," he said coldly. "A man dressed like that doesn't belong up there." Something in Damien's eyes shifted. The calm warmth drained away, replaced by something sharp and still like a blade catching light. He pulled out his personal phone. His thumb moved fast, dialing a number only a handful of executives at Aerocrest had ever seen. What kind of storm was about to be unleashed from a quiet hallway at Gate 14? The call connected on the second ring. A tired voice answered, Franklin Hayes speaking. Franklin was the regional operations director for O'Hare. He managed every Aerocrest flight moving through Chicago. Damien did not announce who he was yet. Franklin, I need you to pull the passenger log for flight AC 9982, he said. Check any changes made in the last 5 minutes. Franklin paused, confused by the direct order. Who is this? He asked carefully. Just check the log, Damien said. Now. He hung up before Franklin could argue. His thumb hovered over the screen for a second, steady despite everything happening around him. Behind Damien, heavy boots echoed down the jet bridge. Transit security officers arrived, one gripping a pair of handcuffs at his belt. Their radios crackled with static, spitting out short bursts of code. Chloe screamed and wrapped both arms around her father's leg. Her small body shook with fear, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The lead officer reached toward Damien's wrist, his handcuffs jingling with a cold metallic sound. Sir, please don't resist, he said flatly. Damien's stomach dropped, but his face stayed still. He had to endure this humiliation just a little longer. He needed the system to expose itself completely. His pulse pounded once, hard against his throat. He forced his shoulders to stay loose, even as every muscle screamed to fight back. Would the officers grab him first, or would Franklin's search arrive just in time? Franklin's fingers flew across his keyboard back at his office. Sweat broke out on his forehead as data filled the screen. The log showed a ticket status changed at 10:52 a.m. It read voluntary seat surrender, approved under employee IDG Mercer. Franklin's stomach turned cold. He recognized the passenger name attached to that seat. Damien Cross, chairman of the entire airline. His mind raced back through every email he had ever sent about cutting costs. Every corner, shaved off security, had his own signature at the bottom. He dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, dark liquid spreading across the tile in a slow, jagged pool. 3 shards skittered under his desk, catching the fluorescent light. He ran. His shoes pounded down the hallway, his tie flapping loose against his chest. He burst through the door to the jet bridge just as an officer reached for Damien's wrist. Stop! Stop right now! Franklin shouted, his voice cracking with panic. The officer froze, confused. Franklin bent forward, hands on his knees, gasping for air. Chairman Cross, he wheezed, straightening up. I am so sorry, sir. Please forgive this mess. Dominic Frost's face went pale as paper. His radio slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a hollow, empty clatter. Jillian, standing a few feet away, felt her throat close up. Her voice came out cracked and thin. Chairman Cross. The security officer, who had reached for Damien's wrist, slowly stepped back, his handcuffs still dangling loose in his fingers. Nobody in the jet bridge moved for a long moment. Chloe wiped her tears and looked up at her father, confusion mixing with a strange new pride on her small face. What happens now that the truth has finally broken through? Franklin held out his tablet with shaking hands. Sir, here's the full log. Someone altered your ticket status without your consent. Damien took the tablet slowly. His eyes scanned the screen, calm and unreadable. This was digital proof, undeniable evidence of a federal security violation. A small red light blinked steadily above the cabin door, a camera system Damien himself had approved installing 2 years earlier. He almost smiled at the irony. His own safety upgrade had just recorded every second of the crime. He looked up at Dominic and Jillian, who stood frozen like statues carved from fear. Victoria Beaumont stepped out into the jet bridge, her heels clicking with far less confidence now. Her face had drained of its usual glow. She smoothed her jumpsuit with shaking hands, forcing her chin up despite the tremor in her voice. Mr. Cross, she said, forcing a thin smile, let's talk privately. I can make this mistake disappear. My company can offer a generous settlement. How generous? Damien asked evenly, watching her eyes rather than her words. Whatever number you need, Victoria said quickly. 100,000, 200,000, just name it. Damien studied her for a long moment before answering. This was never about money, he said. It was about how you treat people you think can't fight back. Damien studied her for a long moment. The hum of the air conditioning system buzzed softly overhead, filling the silence between them. Dominic dropped to his knees on the cold tile. Please, sir, he begged, his voice shaking. I was just following pressure from corporate targets. Jillian knelt beside him, tears streaking down her cheeks. I panicked, she whispered. I made a horrible choice. Her hands shook as she pressed them together, knuckles pale under the harsh jet bridge lights. The faint smell of her spilled coffee still lingered from earlier, bitter and sharp. Franklin shifted nervously. Sir, should the flight still take off? He asked. A delay will cost us a small fortune. He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at his watch, then back at Damien's calm, unreadable face. Nearby, Chloe sniffled quietly, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Her small fingers still smelled faintly of watercolor paint. Damien stood in complete silence for 3 long seconds. The choice in front of him mattered more than any dollar amount. The overhead vents hummed on, steady and indifferent, as if the building itself waited for his answer. Would he protect the airline's profit or stand firm on what was right? Damien looked straight into Franklin's eyes. His voice came out steady, without a trace of anger. Ground this flight immediately, he said. Evacuate every passenger and every crew member for an emergency security audit. Franklin's mouth fell open. Sir, that will cost us. I don't care what it costs, Damien said firmly. A hacked passenger system is not a minor issue. It's a federal violation. Victoria's face twisted with disbelief. Her multi-million-dollar meeting in Los Angeles had just collapsed in front of her eyes. You can't do this, she snapped. Her voice cracked, with real panic for the first time. I just did, Damien replied. Your contract with Aerocrest is canceled, effective immediately. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time all morning, no words came out of her at all. Security officers stepped forward and gently guided Victoria away. Her heels no longer struck the floor with confidence. Now, they simply scraped, uneven and slow against the tile. Dominic and Jillian were stripped of their airline badges on the spot. The small plastic cards clattered onto a metal tray, and the sound felt strangely final. Franklin ordered their records sent straight to federal aviation investigators. The gate area buzzed with confusion as other passengers watched, whispering among themselves. Nobody understood yet what had just happened. A young mother nearby leaned toward her husband. Did that man just shut down the whole flight? She whispered, I heard he owns the airline. Her husband whispered back, eyes wide with disbelief. Word spread quickly through the waiting crowd, passed in hushed voices from row to row. Phones came out, and a few passengers began quietly recording the scene near the gate counter. But Chloe understood one thing clearly. Her father had stood tall, even when the whole world tried to push him down. How would the airline heal from a scandal this large? 3 hours later, the emergency audit finished. Investigators found 17 other tickets quietly altered that same week, all favoring wealthy clients. Every faulty ticket record was corrected. A brand new crew boarded flight AC 9982, their uniforms crisp and their name tags freshly printed. Franklin walked up to Damien with fresh boarding passes in hand. Sir, your original seats are ready. 2D and 2F, just as before. Damien looked at the tickets, then smiled gently and shook his head. No, thank you, he said. Give those seats to someone who truly needs them. He walked toward the economy section, where Samuel Vance sat awkwardly, his knee bent at an uncomfortable angle in the narrow space. Damien held out the 2 first-class passes. Sir, this seat belongs to you, he said. You protected my daughter's dignity today. That means more than any ticket. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. His weathered hands trembled as he accepted the passes. "Son, you didn't have to do that," he said softly. "I wanted to," Damien replied. "You reminded me what really matters." He took Chloe's hand and walked toward row 34, near the back of the plane. The narrow seats creaked as he settled in beside her. Chloe leaned her head against his arm, smiling brighter than she had all day. "Daddy, you're the best chairman ever," she whispered. Damien chuckled softly, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. He wrapped his arm around her and looked out the small, oval window. The plane rolled slowly down the runway. Engines roared to life, steady and strong beneath their feet. Somewhere over the clouds, a simple truth settled into Chloe's young heart. Real power isn't about titles or money. It's about protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. The next morning, sunlight poured through tall windows at a small gallery near LAX. The smell of fresh paint and brewed coffee filled the open room. Chloe's paintings hung along one soft gray wall, each one framed in simple dark wood. Visitors leaned close, studying the bright colors with quiet interest. Damien stood near the back, his hands in his coat pockets, watching his daughter beam at every compliment. His frayed gray sweater felt warm against the cool morning air drifting through the open door. A woman in a floral dress stopped beside a painting of a lighthouse. "This one has so much feeling," she said softly. "Who painted it?" Chloe stepped forward, cheeks flushed pink with pride. "I did," she said. "My daddy always says feelings matter more than fancy things." The woman smiled and glanced toward Damien. He nodded once, warmth spreading quietly through his chest. Nearby, a small brass plaque near the door read, "New Voices Gallery, EST 2019. The scent of fresh flowers drifted from a vase near the entrance, mixing with the smell of drying paint. A gentle string quartet played softly from hidden speakers, filling the room with a calm, easy rhythm. Later that afternoon, Franklin Hayes called with an update. The federal investigation into ticket fraud was moving fast. Investigators had already interviewed 9 other employees across 3 different airports. Victoria's company had already lost 2 other airline partnerships over the scandal. Business news outlets ran short segments about the canceled Apex Zenith deal, calling it a stunning fall for someone once seen as untouchable. Franklin's voice sounded tired, but steady on the phone. "We're rebuilding the whole verification process, sir," he said, "starting with mandatory training for every gate manager." Damien nodded to himself, even though Franklin couldn't see it. "Good," he said simply. "Let's make sure this never happens to anyone else." He ended the call and slipped his phone back into his coat pocket. Outside the gallery window, palm trees swayed gently in the warm afternoon breeze. Samuel Vance sent a short message to, a photo of himself relaxing in his new first-class seat on his flight home to Ohio. His knee rested on a soft pillow, finally free of the cramped economy space. The message read, "Best legroom I've had in 31 years, son. Give that little artist a hug for me." Chloe laughed out loud when she saw his wide, happy grin. That evening, Damien tucked Chloe in a bed at their hotel room. Street lights glowed softly through the curtains, painting thin gold lines across the ceiling. The faint hum of the city drifted up through the window, mixed with the distant whoosh of night traffic. Chloe's small suitcase sat open in the corner, watercolor tubes scattered across the carpet. Damien pulled the blanket up to her chin, tucking the edges the way Maya used to. "Daddy, today was the best day ever," Chloe murmured, already half asleep. Damien kissed her forehead gently. "It was sweetheart," he said, "because you reminded everyone what really matters." He turned off the lamp and sat quietly in the dark for a moment. The old ache for Maya was still there, soft and familiar, but tonight it felt lighter somehow. Real power isn't about titles or money. It's about protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. And sometimes the quietest man in the room turns out to be the strongest one of all.